2 burns. Eyewitness Recollection Tape 1. Subject, Emmet Neilson. Date, March 19th, 2006. The officers sat across the steel table from Emmet, his leg bouncing out of anxiety. Emmet was released from the hospital 4 hours prior to this interview, suffering from 3rd-degree burns on 35% of his body. "How are you feeling, Mr. Neilson?" Officer Sanderson gestured in a friendly manner, trying to read Emmet. "Terrible. I can still feel the flames against my skin." Emmet raised his hand, a large amount of his jaw covered in bandages. "We're sorry to hear that, Emmet. We know how this feels, so we'll keep the questions short. Where were you when the fire started?" Emmet fought back tears, but was physically incapable of producing them. I was in my room, listening to music, and I saw smoke. I came running to the kitchen and saw that the oven was flaming." Emmet details watching it blow and the terrible things to follow. He heard the terrible, blood-curdling screams of his family and neighbors alike. He could still feel the hot blaze against his face, his skin bubbling in the pure heat. The smoke still stung his eyes, just as it had the night when it happened. "We're glad you made it out. Have you heard the numbers?" Emmet shook his head in reply. 2 ovens were the cause of the fire. 2 floors were affected, and the heat passing through the foundation and pipes caused both exits to be melted shut. The elevators were inoperable due to the heat as well, leaving no possible exit for the 2 floors. 74 found dead, 2 in critical condition, and 1 in stable condition. You are the only mobile survivor, and soon maybe the only survivor overall. Officer Sanderson struggled to share the news. Emmet let the details absorb into his mind, still overcome by the realization of the number. 74 bodies. 4 of them his own family. No therapy or survivor groups would break the memory of the terrible events. He had barely made it out. As he began to give up hope, the firefighters had broken down the fire exit, saving anyone they could. Emmet appeared lifeless as he thought about the fire, his eyes glazing over it as if he was in some sort of trance. I'm sorry, is there a way we can postpone this? I don't feel like talking about all of it right now." The officers understood and let Emmet go on with his day. They had set the next eyewitness review 3 days ahead, allowing for Emmet to get some counseling in the meantime. Leaving the station, Emmet felt relief in the feeling of the cold wind against his face. Emmet got onto the bus and decided to head back to the apartment. Emmet got off of his bus and walked to the char-marked building. Upper windows had been stained with smoke, but nothing quite as bad as the giant black band around the brick building. "Terrible. 70 people died or something. People need to keep an eye on their ovens." A girl stood next to him, taking in the sight of the terrible tragedy. 74. 2 in the hospital, Emmet replied in a mumbling fashion. "Were you in there?" I wasn't home when it happened." Emmet responded by turning to face the girl, revealing the bandaged part of his face. "Oh, I'm sorry about everything. I wish you the best of luck in your recovery." Eyewitness Recollection Tape 2. Subject, Emmet Neilson. Date, March 22nd, 2006. Emmet sat down, letting the cold from the table touch the bandages of his burnt forearm. "Let's start with something simple, shall we? Where are you hurt, Emmet?" Officer Sanderson leaned in as he asked the question, hoping to appear friendly and open. Emmet detailed how he had been burnt on the left side of his jaw, his left hand and forearm, upper back, and the right outer thigh. "I walked into the kitchen as the oven in my apartment blew and turned away from the blast. I got a burn on my thigh after trying to burst open the exit door. I lost sight of my sisters after the burn." The officers hung their heads out of sadness, regaining composure after a moment of silence. Officer Sanderson began to ask a question, but quickly dismantled it. Look, this is just procedural, and we don't want to ask you these questions. You're in pain, but the next few questions are a little bit more provocative. We are in no way pointing any fingers at you or anyone in the fire, but did you see anything odd before the fire had started? Anyone or anything out of place? Little kids with matchsticks, anything that was not detailed in what we know thus far? Emmet suddenly became interested in the table. All I know is that my mother was making cookies for my little sister and I. Everything went smoky, and I came to see what was going on. The oven blew and spread the fire over the walls. The room smelled strongly of gas, and my mother was passed out on the floor. Emmet became unable to continue, breaking down in the interview room. So you tried to get your siblings out, but you were met with scalding hot metal? Officer Martinson filled in the blanks, confirmed by a nod from Emmet. All right, Emmet, that's all. Thanks for your cooperation. My condolences and prayers go out to you and the people affected. Emmet then regained composure and shook the officer's hands. Emmet took the bus, going to his father's home for the time being. Emmet received a call from his father. Hey, I've got some bad news. The 2 survivors are expected to die within the next few hours. Emmet remained silent. I'll see you soon. I love you, Em. Emmet hung up the phone, grinning ear to ear. On the way home, he reminisced about the times before the fire, the preparation of the catastrophe, welding the doors shut, leaving small canisters of gas and hairspray in the ovens, tampering with the elevator controls. It had all ended perfectly. Not a trace that he had any doing with the fire, and not a single survivor other than himself. He had followed his plan to a T, and it paid off. The officers had asked most of the right questions. If only they had asked why he started the fire.